Here in this first segment, we're going to talk about something that's not really just about Alabama, but it kind of involves Alabama, and that's the rumors of the college football playoff expansion. And the rumor is now that there's going to be expanded to 12 teams. Just kind of your initial thoughts on the college football playoff expansion possibilities.
I think it's a terrible idea, to be honest. I mean, in all actuality, really, the top four teams are probably, 1 through 4 is going to be in it every year, and I've heard people say, well, there's always a Cinderella in basketball. This ain't basketball. This is football. And the talent spread, most of the time, now there have been some major upsets, and I'm not going to say there hasn't been, but, you're pretty much clicking on all cylinders when you get to the playoffs. And so I don't see how, in any 12 versus 1 or 10 versus 3, however they play, I don't see how anybody's going to beat 1 through 4, and it's always going to be that 1 through 4, just in my honest opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I've said the same thing for really ever since the college football playoff has kind of been incorporated into college football. Um, you only have a couple teams, maybe 4 to 5 at the max every year that you can really say has a legitimate chance to win the championship. So expanding to 12 to me is just I don't understand. Well, I do understand it. They want more money. I mean, that's what it's about. But uh, I don't get the part of making it. It creates parity. I don't believe that. They thought that the transfer rule was going to create parity, and all that did was allow Alabama to go out and get arguably the best inside linebacker in college football on their team that they didn't have before, and also a 4-star wide receiver from Ohio State. So I, I they make all these rules, and then they have these unintended consequences. And expanding the playoffs is, to me, not even looking at the purity of the sport and what separates college football from other sports. Uh, just the unintended consequences are bad enough.
Absolutely. And there was an article put out the other day from sports.yahoo.com. And what they did was they pretty much had like a little put together of the 12-team playoff from last year, if there was a 12-team playoff. Listen to some of these matchups. Number 12, Coastal Carolina at number 4, Notre Dame. Talking about it, I mean, personal opinion, that's a snooze fest. Notre Dame walks all over Coastal Carolina.
First of all, who wants to watch that?
Right, exactly. And Indiana, number 11, Indiana at number 5, Texas A&M. To me,
beat down.
Another beat down. Now Georgia at Cincinnati, number 9 versus number 8. That potentially could be a good game.
But we saw that game in the Peach Bowl, Jake.
I know.
Georgia played with like half of their team and still won.
Exactly. I mean, you get
a break.
Right. Which in turn, if all those teams that the ranked higher teams went on, this is who Cincinnati be playing. Number 1 Alabama, beat down,
stomping.
Yeah. Clemson, number 2 Clemson versus Florida.
Clemson stomping Florida.
Yeah, I agree with that. Ohio State versus A&M. That might be a pretty good game.
Yeah, you get a good game there.
Yeah.
Well, Jack, the truth is, and we talked about it last year, A&M probably should have got in over Notre Dame. I didn't really have a problem with Notre Dame getting in, but you could have flip-flopped those two teams, and I think I'm with you. That would have been a heck of a game between Ohio State and Texas A&M.
Absolutely. And then, of course, the last was Oklahoma versus Notre Dame. So, I mean,
Oklahoma would destroy Notre Dame.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the matchups, I mean, nobody wants to see Alabama versus Coastal Carolina. I'm sorry.
No.
I mean, that's a beatdown all day, every day. Honestly, nobody wants to see Alabama versus Cincinnati, too. That's a beatdown all day. I mean, so like we said, 4 teams is good enough. And, I mean, if they want to expand it to 8, maybe. But 12, come on, give me a break.
Well, I mean, Like I said, there's only a couple teams every year that are legitimate contenders to
Mm-hmm.
win the whole thing. Last year, that was Alabama and Ohio State, and we saw what Alabama did to Ohio State. Now, I will
Right.
say this: towards the end of the season, Oklahoma was playing as well as anybody else in the country.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, but to me, the two best teams in the country last year are the two teams who play for the championship. So
Absolutely.
I don't understand it. It makes no sense to me. If I was making the decisions, I would go back to the BCS.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
I would get if you wanted to keep the playoff, keep the playoff. Just let the BCS formula come up with the four teams because this whole committee thing's a joke anyway. I mean, and we've talked about that before. It's a joke. It's a political game. So I personally, let's just go back to the BCS formula.
hey, I'm fine with that. I was going to say on that point. I think it was like 2012 when we played LSU again in the national championship game. The first game was back and forth, neck and neck. That second game, Alabama rolled away with it. So, those, in my opinion, were the two best teams. Alabama lost the first matchup. LSU, I think, ran the table until that game. Alabama wiped them off the field the second game. So, I mean, the BCS always had the two best teams in there, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
No
so
question about it. No question
yeah.
about it. And what I'm about to say is going to piss off every other fan base in the country.
So what?
Besides the handful that I'm going to mention, but we've been playing college football for well over 100 years, and they've decided the champion several different ways, trying to make it easier or to grow the parity in the game for over 100 years now. But you know
Right.
what? The same few teams win the national championship every year. It's either going to be Alabama, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Ohio State. It's going to be one of those teams 9 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
Back
And
in the day, USC. But what I'm saying is we're doing all these changes, and you know who's going to benefit the most? The same teams that have been winning for the last 100 years.
right.
So I
Yeah.
mean, it's the way it is. We can't stop this train. It's rolling. They're going to go to 12 teams,
Yeah.
but it's a joke. I mean, it's all about the money. They're trying to satisfy these teams like Cincinnati and Boise State and Central Florida, uh, who the only people who care about are their fan bases. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I'm an Alabama fan, but I care what happens at Ohio State. I care what happens at Clemson. I care
Mhm.
what happens at Texas A&M. I care what
Right.
happens at LSU. I don't give a rat's. You know what happens at Coastal Carolina.
right. They had a dream season, but still, there wasn't no match for the top teams
Yeah,
whatsoever.
I mean, well, and like I said, I know that's going to piss some people off, and I sound like an arrogant Alabama fan, and maybe I am being, but I mean, come on. The truth is, Alabama fans care about their school and the other big dogs. They really don't care what's going on at Cincinnati or Coastal Carolina or Central Florida. I mean, it's just the
Right.
truth.